In an ancient village, there lived a man named Hakeim who had the strangest curse anyone had ever seen. Everything he predicted came true, but always in the worst possible way. If he said, "It looks like rain today," the village would flood. If he mentioned someone looked healthy, they would fall sick the next day. If he praised a good harvest, locusts would attack the crops. The villagers were terrified of him. "He brings bad luck," they whispered. "His words are poisoned." Hakeim became so afraid of his own voice that he stopped speaking completely. He lived alone on the edge of the village, communicating only through gestures, spending his days in silence and misery. "God," he prayed silently every night, "why have you cursed me like this? I never wished harm on anyone. My heart is pure, but my words bring destruction. What kind of cruel joke is this?" Years passed in this torturous silence. Hakeim grew old, bitter, and completely alone. One day, a terrible drought hit the region. Rivers dried up, wells became empty, and people were dying of thirst. The village elders tried everything: prayers, rituals, digging new wells, but nothing worked. In desperation, they came to Hakeim's hut. The village chief, swallowing his fear, begged him, "Hakeim, sir, we know you don't speak anymore, but please, our children are dying. Can you help us somehow?" Hakeim's heart broke seeing their condition, but how could he help when his words brought disaster? That night, as he watched children crying from thirst, something clicked in his mind. A crazy, impossible idea. The next morning, Hakeim walked to the village center. People scattered in fear, but he raised his hand and spoke his first words in 10 years. "This drought will never end. The rains will never come. We are all doomed to die of thirst in this cursed land." People gasped in horror. "He has spoken. Now we are truly finished." But Hakeim wasn't done. With tears streaming down his face, he continued, "The wells will remain forever dry. The sky will stay clear and merciless. No water will ever flow in this village again." Within hours, dark clouds gathered from nowhere. Thunder roared across the clear sky. Rain began to fall, gentle at first, then in torrents. The villagers stood in shock, dancing in the rain, collecting precious water in every pot and bowl they could find. Within hours, dark clouds gathered from nowhere. Thunder roared across the clear sky. Rain began to fall, gentle at first, then in torrents. The villagers stood in shock, dancing in the rain, collecting precious water in every pot and bowl they could find. Old Teacher, the wisest man in the village, helped him up. "Son Hakeim, what just happened? How did you know?" "Teacher," Hakeim whispered, "I finally understood my curse. God didn't give me the power to predict the future. He gave me the power to speak the opposite of what needs to happen." "What do you mean?" "For 20 years, when I said good weather, God sent storms to prove me wrong. When I said good health, God sent healing by making me wrong again. I thought my words brought bad luck, but actually, God was always doing the opposite of what I said to protect people." The teacher's eyes widened. "So, you're saying—" "I'm saying God was never punishing me. He was using me as his instrument, but I was too blind to see the pattern. Every time my bad predictions came true, something good eventually followed. The floods I caused always replenished the groundwater. The illnesses I brought always made people stronger and more immune. The revelation hit like lightning." "But why didn't God just give me normal powers?" Hakeim asked, still confused. The teacher smiled. "Because, son, if you could predict good things directly, you would have become proud. People would have worshipped you instead of God. But this way, you remained humble, suffered with them, and when they needed you most, you were willing to sacrifice your own reputation to save them. I don't understand. Think about it. Today, when you spoke those terrible words about eternal drought, what were you feeling? I was terrified. I thought I was condemning everyone. Exactly. You spoke not from pride or power, but from love and sacrifice. You were willing to take the blame for cursing them if it meant saving them. That pure intention is what made the miracle happen. Days later, as the village celebrated the end of drought, people began to understand. They came to Hakeim not in fear, but in gratitude. Hakeim, sir, we are sorry. We never understood that you were God's chosen one. But Hakeim shook his head. No, my friends, I was never chosen because I was special. I was chosen because I was willing to be misunderstood. God doesn't always work through the wise and the popular. Sometimes he works through the broken and the rejected. A young boy asked, "But uncle, why did God give you such a confusing gift?" Hakeim knelt down to the child's level. "Son, because the world is full of people who speak sweetly but mean harm. God needed someone who would speak harshly but mean love. My curse taught me that God's ways are not our ways. What looks like punishment might be preparation. What feels like rejection might be protection." From that day forward, whenever the village faced impossible problems, they would come to Hakeim. He would speak the worst possible outcome, and God would prove him wrong in the most beautiful way. But more importantly, Hakeim's story spread to other villages. People who felt cursed, rejected, or misunderstood would hear about the man whose curse became his greatest blessing. If God can use someone like Hakeim, they would say, then maybe he has a plan for broken people like us too. Years later, when Hakeim was very old, someone asked him, "Do you ever wish God had given you a normal life?" Hakeim looked at his village, green, prosperous, and full of people who loved him, and smiled. "My friend, I spent 20 years thinking God was my enemy, but he was actually writing the most beautiful love story through the strangest pen. My curse was never a curse. It was God's way of making me his secret miracle worker." He paused, looking up at the sky. Sometimes God doesn't change your circumstances because your circumstances are exactly what the world needs. My pain became everyone's gain. My confusion became God's solution. God doesn't always work through the obvious or the perfect. Sometimes he works through the broken, the misunderstood, and the rejected. Your curse might just be your calling in disguise.